Hi, everyone. Welcome to a special episode of Mini Scroll. Instead of bringing you the biggest stories on the internet today, I am bringing you an interview. This is someone who is so entrenched in pop culture and internet culture that he launched his own Stan Twitter account earlier this year for the one and only TrishCrave. You may have heard of this account. It's called TrishCrave. He reached out, asked if there was any way he could come on the podcast, talk about his love of Trisha, being entrenched in stan culture, and of course, I had to say yes. He did want to stay anonymous, so if you guys are watching on Spotify or on YouTube, you will see a fun little edit that I have done to keep his face anonymous. But I had such a good time speaking with Aiden. I don't think we've ever interviewed a stan in particular. We've done lots of episodes on fandom culture, stan culture, toxic standom, but we've never actually spoken to someone who is running like a news update stan account like this for a particular celebrity before. So without further ado, I hope you guys enjoy this episode. So excited to be chatting with TrishCrave today, you guys. This is maybe one of our most iconic interviews that we've ever done. You guys know I am a longtime TrishCrave apologist. It's just in my blood. I can't help it. And I feel like I am sitting here today with someone who could probably say that he feels the same. So welcome to Infinite Scroll, Aiden.
Hello, thank you for having me.
So before we kind of get into all things Trish, can you tell us how you came across the pod and why you wanted to come chat with me today?
So, a lot of people on my account are so passionate. Like, they'll send me clips as soon as they see stuff. Like, as soon as something gets posted or something, they'll send it straight to me. So, I'm always checking my DMs constantly. And someone sent me a DM and they're like, hey, this podcast talked about you. They mentioned you. And I was like, oh, that's crazy. Because, I'm not used to this kind of stuff. So, I was like, oh, well, let me check this out. So, I watched the episode and you were so, so sweet. And you even talked about the account for a good like 5 minutes, which I was so surprised. I was like, oh, this is crazy. It was at like 800 followers when you talked about it. So it was a super, super small account. And I was like, this is crazy. So I wanted to contact you and just be like, oh, well, I seen it.
Oh, thank you. Speaking of the account and how it's grown, can you tell me about yourself and how you got into pop culture? And then we'll chat a little bit about the account and how you've grown that.
I am in PR, which is, pretty close to the pop culture world. And I remember even being super, super young, I just loved pop culture. Just, pop stars, everything about that. I feel like the first album I ever listened to was The Fame by Lady Gaga, which, is all about this. I feel like it's so Gen Z of, people to say, I want to be famous. It's like all about that. So I feel like ever since I was little, I just loved pop culture.
Yeah, fair enough. Me too. I literally had a bedroom covered in posters. I'm a millennial, so it was posters
Oh,
back then.
yeah.
I feel like you guys probably had like
Mhm.
Tumblr boards, but we had
Yeah.
like a physical magazines that we all like rip the pages out and just all over my bedroom, just celebrities everywhere. I've just always been so obsessed with pop culture. I completely get it. So tell me about your journey as a Trisha Paytas stan. When did you first get into the Trisha lore?
Ooh, okay. So I feel like I was the first generation of these iPad babies. I remember getting YouTube super, super young, and Trish was actually one of the first people I saw on there with like Shane, Joey, all the OG YouTubers back in the day. And I feel like I've always just connected with her. I always thought she was so funny and so real. I feel like nowadays people always like to put up like a persona online, and she's always been real. Like no editing the videos. A video could be an hour long and she's literally just sitting there, just staring at the camera. I just always thought it was so real. And yeah, it was inspiring to see her growth even now.
Yeah, I completely agree. I obviously, like I said, have been such a long time Trisha watcher, and it's hard sometimes because she's gone through an evolution, and there have been years where it's been really hard to be someone that has followed her and you want to support her, but it's hard to support her in those moments. But I completely agree. She's someone where you're watching her content. And what I find so fascinating about her is that you can never tell if she is performing or if this is actually her. And I think that's one of the most interesting things about her entire online persona is, she feels so real on one hand, but she also feels like this complete caricature where you're like, she could just be trolling us this whole time and you would have no idea. On that note, do you have, I assume you follow the podcast very closely, Just Trish? Yes. So do you have a favorite episode, or do you have a favorite like Trisha Paytas moment in general?
Ooh, okay. Actually, this is gonna be a super basic answer, but I love the classics. So like the "I Love You, Jesus."
I love you, Jesus.
I was like, I'm gonna bat for that song forever. A lot of people like to joke about it, but I'm like, it's a good song. It's actually a really good song. It's a bop. I love Bet on It. Have you seen that video, the recreation from High School Musical? I
Of
was like,
course, I
okay,
have seen it,
yeah.
Aiden.
Bet on it, bet on it, bet on it, bet on it.
Like, yeah, it's perfect. It's one of my favorites.
I love, like, in terms of her eras, I love her, beach house Trish era. That's where I discovered her. So I will always have that, like, in my heart. And then, of course, I know that this is when she was in her deepest turmoil. So I don't love this for her, but I loved for her audience, for me, the crying on the kitchen floor content. Like, nothing hits like that because it's exactly what you were saying. Watching her have these breakdowns and just stream of consciousness saying things that everybody feels but would never, like, so many people would never say that stuff out loud and admit that those kinds of things about themselves. That content just hits.
It does. It actually goes perfect with like the TikTok edits. I don't know if you're on like the edit Trisha TikTok, but there's always all those sad edits where it leads to her like getting married with Moses and the kids. And I was like, this is like truly inspiring because it's like we followed her on this whole journey.
Absolutely. She's lived her entire adult life out online, right? Like she started her channel,
Yeah.
I think she was 18. So it's been a wild journey. Okay, let's talk about Stan Twitter. So you have this Twitter account, obviously called TrishCrave. So first of all, have you been noticed by Trisha and Oscar?
Yes, I've actually been mentioned on the podcast a few times, and every single time it's surreal. I always just am like, wait, this is like crazy. They've always been so, so sweet. There was actually one time where they mentioned me, where Trisha kind of dragged me, and I thought it was so, so funny because Oscar, you know how they talk about like headlines on there, like hot topics. So they were talking about Popgrave, and she's like, well, did Popgrave tweet that, or was that Trish Grave? And I just thought it was so funny. And I'm actually in, I wouldn't say close relation with Oscar. But we've exchanged a good amount of DMs, and I like to think we're pretty close.
Oh, I love that. No, that's really exciting. I feel like, running some type of like stan or update, like fan account, that's like the goal, right? Is to be noticed by your fave. So that's really exciting that it happened so quickly for you. How long have you been on Twitter, and have you always been part of Stan Twitter?
So I've actually been on Twitter for a good maybe 2, 3 years. And I've been focusing on this TrishCrave account for like maybe it's relatively new, so it's like maybe 4 months. But I've had other accounts, just like spying. But I've actually been on different like sides of Stan Twitter. I feel like I've always been on Stan Twitter because that's just like where my page leads to. So I feel like I started on like Swifty Twitter, and then I think that led me to like Barb Twitter. And that's where it got really messy, where I learned about like truly how they drag people on there. And then I feel like now I'm definitely on this Trisha side of Twitter, which I've never really been on. So I was like, wait, this is actually like a fun part. It's just like good vibes and it's just memes. Like everyone just gives each other memes. But I just love Stan Twitter so much.
Yeah, that's what I love about your account is, and I'm sure I said this when we talked about it on the pod, but it's like, it's not too serious. Like, this is hilarious. Having a Twitter account with updates about a specific internet celebrity, especially someone who is like outrageous like Trish, is just the perfect way that Twitter needs to be used. Okay, so can you tell me about how Trish Crave came to life? What motivated you to start the account?
Ooh, yeah. So I've actually never really talked about this. So as you know, I mean, you're also a fan of like Pop Crave, and there's actually been a couple other craves. Like I know of, there's like a drag crave where they focus on like the drag queens, and I knew that no one was doing one on like a celebrity, like a specific celebrity. And I was like, I mean, I love Trisha. I'm a fan of the podcast. I was like, let me just run this. I'm sure I could do it. And I just started it one day with I don't even remember what my first post. It was probably something really random. It had like 2 likes, and When you start out a new project for the first week and like no one sees it, I was like, I don't know if this is gonna work out. But I just stuck to it and it's actually grown pretty big and it's really exciting.
Yeah, I love that. What's your process of sourcing updates and how do you decide on what to post, especially between like all the rumors and probably, I'm sure, a lot of misinformation about Trish comes across your desk? How do you pick and choose what to post?
So I feel like, there's a lot of controversy surrounding Trisha. So I feel like I definitely have to like pick and choose what I post. I could think of a recent example of Jeffree Star's appearance on the podcast. I feel like that's definitely been a hot topic surrounding Trisha. And it definitely made me nervous when I first heard about it. Because, you have two sides. So it's a moral dilemma for me. Because it's like, do I post it? And sure, this is going to get like a lot of views and a lot of clicks. But it's also like, I don't want to get her in trouble on my own account. How I source stuff. It's usually, through her personally, or she does have a Patreon. But I did reach out to her and I did ask her, and I was like, can I post some of this stuff? And she messaged me back and she's like, we do like to keep that stuff private. And I was like, oh, okay. I was like, that's okay. So I was like, if the queen told me to stop, I'll stop.
Oh my God, I can't believe that you were like DMing with her. I love that. Good
Yeah,
for you. That's exciting.
thank you.
Yeah, we feel the same, having our brand is all about internet culture. And it's hard because when you cover something, you can usually tell what's going to get a lot of traction, but sometimes it is at the detriment of the creator that you're speaking about. So there is always that kind of like ethical dilemma that you're trying to weigh up. Like, is it worth covering this from a public interest perspective and knowing that I'm going to get a lot of traffic from it, but then it will possibly hurt the person that we are talking about. So I completely get it. It's something that every single, reporter, journalist, even I'm sure Stan Twitter account faces. It's just a constant that push and pull, right? So how much time out of your day or week would you say that TrishCrave takes up now that it has grown so much?
I'd probably say maybe I'll say 2 to 3 hours in my day because a lot of it is actually getting content that could be watching the podcast, checking her stories, keeping up with her, also checking my DMs, seeing what people say. So I feel like it's a decent amount of my time, but so far it hasn't become too like overwhelming just because, at the end of the day, I do support her. So it is just fun.
Nice. Do you make any money from the account?
I've made a couple dollars, but just from like what's it called? Like the Twitter Blue stuff. Like it's definitely not as much as people think. Where it's like I would think that they'd pay more, but no, yeah, it's super small stuff. But I've never done it for like the money. So yeah,
Yeah, it's like a hobby. It's like a passion
yeah, for
project.
sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you have any type of like Stan Twitter community? So, for example, I have like a little community of podcasters, pop culture, internet culture podcasters that I've become familiar with over the last few years. And I know drama channels. I've interviewed a couple of those on the podcast, and there's a few of them that like know each other and support each other. Do you have that in Stan Twitter?
There's definitely a lot of people that I'm in close contact with, and they're just always super, super nice. And they also think it's cool because it's like, oh, I'm messaging TrishCrave. I think it's just like the mystery to it that fascinates people. But I'm like, I'm really not that cool, guys. Like, it's really nothing special.
Have you seen any like wild theories as to who Trish Crave is? Do people think that Trish Crave is possibly like Oscar or Trish herself?
I've definitely got it, especially in the beginning. Because in the beginning, they were like, oh, Oscar, no, this is you running it. Because, like, no one would do this. And I was like, no, it's not Oscar. Or just recently, Adam McIntyre, he's been talking about on his podcast, he's mentioned it. Actually, in his interview with Oscar, he mentioned it to him. And he's like, do you ever get accused of running Church Grave? And I was like, I didn't even know these rumors were going around. And I saw some people commenting that too. And they're like, Adam made this up.
Do you know who runs Just Oscar Crave? Have you been in contact with
Ooh.
them?
I actually do know who it is, and I will keep it a mystery. But yeah, I am in close contact with them.
And it's not you.
It's not me. Record straight. It's not me. I'm like, I'm not Trish Crave and Oscar Crave, just one.
That's a full-time job. Okay. So I wanted to talk a little bit more about like the psychology of being a stan or a super fan. There's a lot of research that indicates that being a stan can be part of someone's identity, which is why stans go, to bat so hard for their faves. When it comes to your experience, would you agree with this? As someone who is obviously running a Stan account, but I'm sure you're also interacting with a lot of Trish Stans.
I think there's definitely a lot of people. Well, Trisha talks about this, like the parasocial relationships people have with these celebrities. And I feel like it's very important for people to realize, like, at the end of the day, I feel like we're falling in love with the idea of somebody and not necessarily them as like a person. So I think that definitely shocks people when they find out like the real version of people. And that's how, I mean, people get canceled, because you find out like the real person. I feel like the first thing that comes to mind is the whole Cynthia. Erivo, I think that's how you pronounce her last name, from Wicked, how she talked about how she was uncomfortable with a lot of the memes and stuff going around on Twitter. And then people just made it a bigger joke and they're like, oh, we can't talk about this because it's going to trigger Cynthia. And I was like, come on, guys. Like, it's funny until it's not like that? And I think we just need to listen.
Absolutely, for sure. It's good that you can have that perspective, and you don't seem too like deep in it as someone who obviously is, running a fan update account. Do your friends and family know that you are Trish Crave?
I mean, not really. It's I mean my immediate family, like my parents, sure they know, and my closest friends, but it's not something that like I've posted. Like I'm sure if I posted on my Instagram story, everyone would be like, "Who is that?" But yeah, it's not like private, but yeah, I mean it is like a small circle. I guess I never really thought about it.
Yeah. So you're not like intentionally keeping it a secret. It's just something that you haven't like talked about. So being a stan can have, kind of a bad rap. There are a lot of examples of stans engaging in unhealthy or entitled behavior in the pursuit of being noticed by their fave. How do you personally respond to this criticism? And is being noticed by Trisha, which obviously has happened for you now, is that your primary goal with the account?
I think for the first part of the question, I think about the stands, they just need to chill out. I get the passion though. You want to be noticed by your favorite person so bad. And with social media, you have that platform. You could be any person. No one knows who you are behind that avatar. And it's like you're going to try your hardest to get noticed by your celebrity. And I mean, I get it. I mean, that's what my account is. So I definitely get it. I think, yeah, like you said, I think that was definitely my primary goal getting started. But I think now I really want to go on Just Trish in some capacity. Well, I actually do have a plan.
Okay, cool. Because my next question was going to be like, what's the goal for the account in general? So is the goal to help launch your own internet personality career? Are you aspiring to have your own platform outside of Trisha, or is this really just like for memes?
I think definitely, I feel like it's both parts of it. I definitely want to try to create something of my own eventually, but for sure now I want to focus on this. I think we'll start to branch off definitely well, I guess I could touch on it. It kind of go along with my plan to get on Just Trish. So let me quickly, I'll tell you about that. So she has this event in December, which is her Trishmas live show, and I bought a meet and greet ticket. And I'm really excited because I'm gonna actually meet her. So we're gonna get the Trisha Paytas, Trish Crave first time they're meeting, and we're gonna get that iconic picture. And that was gonna be my moment because it's gonna be crazy because I've met a good amount of celebrities, and it's gonna be the first time where I mean they know who I am. So I'll meet Trisha, and she'll be like, "Oh, like I know who you are." So I'm gonna pitch her my idea for the show. I'm gonna gatekeep that, but I have a really good idea that I know she's gonna love.
Oh my God, I love this. You are putting your PR training to work here. The way you're talking about the account and kind of being entrenched in stan culture in general, you're looking at it more from like an objective perspective, which I think is really healthy and it's super important. And I think that's what will get you far, which is like really exciting for you. The last thing that I wanted to ask you about is, has running Trish Crave changed your perception of Trisha or her fandom in any way?
Ooh, it's definitely changed my perception of the fandom because, especially growing up watching her, it definitely feels like it's just you, especially telling my friends and stuff. They don't really know about this world. Not now. Now, definitely they know who she is. But I think, especially with this whole community, with the Church Crib account, seeing all these other people who are just like me, who are watching her videos and they think she's just like so funny and iconic. Because, I mean, yeah, you could see the comments on the videos, but once you see it, like, in a community space, it's definitely way better.
Yeah, it like solidifies that you're not the only one and you're not crazy for being so into this person. Well, this has been so interesting to chat with you, Aiden. I have never spoken to anyone that runs a Stan account in an interview capacity like this. And I hope that, this was a good experience for you. But this was so fascinating to hear that you have more of an end goal, than just wanting to run this update account for the rest of your life. I think it's so cool. And I can't wait to see where TrishCrave goes.
Thank you. Me too.
Thank you so much again to Aiden, aka TrishCrave, for joining me in today's episode. I hope you guys liked this interview. As always, please rate, review, and subscribe. It helps me so much. It helps me grow. Please rate us on Spotify. We're trying to get our star ratings up. I love you guys, and I will talk to you tomorrow. Bye.